What are the Avengers? We're the Avengers, not the pre-Vengers.
Okay.
Right?
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. It's been 11 years since the Avengers first teamed up to protect the MCU, and a lot has happened since. The team got a new headquarters, added some new members, broke up, reunited, and saved the universe a few times in between. But today, I want to talk about the other Avengers teams, and I don't mean alternate versions from the multiverse.
Oh, you mean the Avengers with Uma Thurman and Ralph Fiennes fighting Sean Connery with umbrellas?
No, I definitely don't mean that, and I also went to that movie thinking it was going to be like the Marvel Avengers. Now, I also don't mean other Marvel super teams like Guardians of the Galaxy, the Defenders, the Midnight Suns, or even the Revengers.
Yeah, it's called the Revengers.
Revenges?
I'm talking about Avengers offshoots, various spin-off versions of the team that exist in the comics. Now, if you watch this channel, you've probably heard me mention them a few times before, like the Dark Avengers and the Young Avengers. But today, I want to focus on these other Avengers teams and their members and talk about when we'll see them in the MCU. I'm going to go through which ones we've sort of seen on screen already, which ones are unlikely but could show up, and which ones are almost definitely being set up to join the MCU and soon.
Oh, you mean like the Great Lakes Avengers?
No, Doug, I definitely don't mean Doorman, Big Bertha, or the rest of the Great Lakes Avengers, which is a real team, by the way.
But all the signs are obvious. Do you even watch these movies, person?
Okay, fine. If there's time, we will talk about the Great Lakes Avengers. But first, I want to talk about slightly more prominent teams like the New Avengers. The New Avengers was a Marvel comic series that began in 2004 and was written by the great Brian Michael Bendis. Now, the New Avengers, like some other offshoots, are technically a different continuation of the main Avengers. This was all during the Civil War crossover in the comics. Members of the Avengers who didn't agree with the Superhero Registration Act made up the New Avengers, still performing their world-saving duties even though they're wanted by the government.
Pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now, but whatever.
Now, in the comics, members of the New Avengers include Cap, Bucky, Luke Cage, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Echo, and Wolverine. Even though they're never explicitly called this, we've pretty much seen the New Avengers in the MCU already. Actually, you can interpret two separate groups as the New Avengers. There's the new lineup at the end of Age of Ultron when Iron Man, Hawkeye, Hulk, and Thor are succeeded by Rhodey, Vision, Falcon, Scarlet Witch, and your mom. Now, at the time, many fans considered them to be the MCU version of the New Avengers, even though they had nothing to do with the Mutant Registration Act or being outlaws. The rationale being that the MCU will often take pretty wide liberties with some comic storylines.
Just a roll. The Mandarin, see, it's not real.
The real New Avengers would be the team that does go on the lam after refusing to sign the Sokovia Accords. That's the MCU's version of the Superhuman Registration Act. This team includes Cap, Bucky, Falcon, Black Widow, and the Scarlet Witch. They basically remain as vigilante fugitives for 2 years up until the snap. And besides a solo adventure with Black Widow, we never really got to see what this crew was up to during that time period. Now, while the MCU has moved way on, it would be really cool if we got a flashback movie or a series that takes place in the period between Civil War and when we see them show up in Scotland. It would be a great way to bring back Chris Evans without convoluting the continuity, and we could see more of how Vision and Wanda's relationship blossomed. It could even serve as a prequel series to The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and be titled The New Avengers. Or it could be titled Secret Avengers, another name that some fans gave this group during Phase 3. Again, this would be a loose MCU interpretation of the comics Secret Avengers, which was a Black Ops team led by Cap in the post-Civil War era. Unlike the New Avengers, the comic book Secret Avengers were sanctioned by the government, but faced off with Nick Fury of all people.
Want to see my lease?
The Secret Avengers roster included War Machine, Valkyrie, Moon Knight, Black Widow, Sharon Carter, Ant-Man, Beast, Nova, and your dad. Didn't see that coming, did ya? The New Avengers flashback movie or series that I just proposed could easily be focused on Black Ops-centric adventures like the Secret Avengers comics and take on a tone similar to the Winter Soldier.
Deep shadow conditions.
But the time for Secret Avengers may have sadly passed, considering that we've already seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a show that took some inspiration from the series, and the fact that Fury has a lot going on with that other secret project.
Avengers Secret Wars?
Nope, the other one.
The Secret of the Ooze?
No, dude, that's not even Marvel.
Secret Invasion?
There it is, high five. So those two teams, the New Avengers and Secret Avengers, we've already sort of seen in the MCU. But since Endgame, the number of superheroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has skyrocketed.
Welcome to the circus.
With more like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four soon to join the mix, the door is open to several other offshoots that we could get, and one Avengers team in particular is likely to come sooner rather than later.
The Great Lakes Avengers.
Damn it, Doug, no, the Young Avengers. This team is exactly what it sounds like, Marvel's answer to the Teen Titans. The comic series debuted in 2005 and was created by Alan Heinberg and Jim Chung and featured a team of, well, young superheroes heroes that are initially brought together by Vision of all people. The MCU version of the Young Avengers could be connected to Vision as well, especially since his kids are members in the comic with the superhero names Wiccan and Speed.
But they weren't real, and the real ones live in a different dimension. You big dum-dum.
Yeah, but come on, the ship of Theseus or whatever, they could still show up. There are other Young Avengers from the comics who've appeared in the MCU already. Kate Bishop, America Chavez, Kid Loki, Cassie Lang, Elijah Bradley. Bradley, the grandson of former Captain America Isaiah Bradley, goes by Patriot in the comics. Other young heroes that can make up the MCU Young Avengers include Ms. Marvel, Ironheart, Scar, Axel, Love, and maybe eventually Morgan Stark. This team could get its own movie or Disney Plus series, or even become the core Avengers in phases 7 and beyond, when the older members age out of playing their leads.
Maybe I'll try some of that life Tony was telling me to get.
I mean, Paul Rudd can't do this forever. He's already 78 years old. The Young Avengers could also tie into the upcoming crossover film Avengers Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. One of the comic book's core members is Iron Lad, aka Nathaniel Richards, aka Kang the Conqueror. A young Kang could feature prominently in the next Avengers film, possibly even going against versions of his older self through time travel shenanigans.
You mean shenanigans?
Oh. The Young Avengers might even get set up in the upcoming Marvels film. Besides co-starring Ms. Marvel, maybe we'll see Noh-Varr, the fourth Marvel and Young Avenger known as Marvel Boy. But if I were betting money, I'd say the Young Avengers are the most likely offshoot to show up in the MCU. But another team that has a good chance is one that identifies with a particular geographical area of the United States. Aren't you going to say Great Lakes Avengers?
No, you know, the thought hadn't even crossed my mind. I assumed you were talking about the West Coast Avengers.
Well, you're right. I am talking about the West Coast Avengers, California's answer to the East Coast OG Avengers. West Coast Avengers #1 dropped in 1984 and was written by Roger Stern. Once again, it's the Vision who comes up with the idea for a new team. And what can I say? The man had vision.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The West Coast chapter was led by Hawkeye and included his wife Mockingbird as well as James Rhodes using the Iron Man alias. In 2018, a new incarnation of the West Coast Avengers launched with America Chavez and Kate Bishop. Considering the MCU already has a handful of heroes in the Golden State, it would be pretty sweet to get a one-off movie or a Disney Plus series featuring them together. The lineup could include superpowered Californians like She-Hulk, Shang-Chi, Wasp, Goliath, Cassie Lang, and your Ant-Man Scott Lang. The MCU can also bring in comic book members like America Chavez and Rhodey. Hawkeye and Mockingbird could give up the farm life to help mentor the new group, or Clint can send Kate Bishop in his place. Besides already having a lot of perfect candidates, the West Coast Avengers could show up in another MCU project, Wonder Man. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II will star in the Disney Plus series as the titular character, who was a founding member of the West Coast Avengers. That show is being co-created by Shang-Chi director Destin Daniel Cretton and will feature Trevor Slattery, so Shang-Chi and San Francisco could play some role as well. Destin Daniel Cretton is also helming Avengers the Kang Dynasty, so maybe the West Coast Avengers will be part of a much larger crossover. Another Avengers offshoot is the A-Force, not to be confused with the A-Team.
We're gonna crash! We're gonna crash! Please get him off me!
The A-Force comics debuted in 2015 as part of the Secret Wars event and was created by G. Willow Wilson, Marguerite Bennett, and Jorge Molina. They were notable for being Marvel's first all-female Avengers team and featured She-Hulk, Dazzler, Medusa, and Nico Minori. Now, we got a glimpse of what this would look like in Avengers Endgame, but that scene got criticized as being hollow and pandering.
Girls get it done.
To be honest, it could be tough for Marvel to pull this off again without it seeming like pandering again. But with She-Hulk's prominence and the team's Secret Wars origins, the MCU could organically introduce A-Force into the larger story. One of its core members was Singularity, a sentient pocket universe. A-Force co-creator G. Willow Wilson likened her to Q from Star Trek The Next Generation, a character that struggles with what it means to be an individual rather than an all-knowing constant being.
Eat any good books lately?
Singularity would be a very cool, unique addition to the MCU, and now there's plenty of existing MCU characters who could join her on the A-Force. The Marvels, Black Panther, Kate Bishop, Ironheart, Echo, the Scarlet Scarab, Cassie Lang, Cosmo, and Yelena Belova. Yelena, though, is more likely to show up as a member of a different team, the Dark Avengers.
Ooh, Dark Avengers. Sounds dark.
Not really. So in the comics, after the Skrulls' secret invasion, S.H.I.E.L.D. was reorganized into Hammer, led by Norman Osborn of all people.
He's something of a S.H.I.E.L.D. director himself.
Not bad, high five. Osborn also takes control of the Avengers and fills its ranks with members from his previous team, the Thunderbolts. Now this is where Yelena, who's starring in the Thunderbolts movie next year, comes in. This team, also known as the Dark Avengers, is also made up of former supervillains who are wearing the costumes of and pretending to be the original Good Avengers. Moonstone masquerades as Ms. Marvel, Venom is Spider-Man, Bullseye as Hawkeye, etc. The team also included Noh-Varr, who I mentioned was also a young Avenger. He eventually takes on the name Captain Marvel. Shazam! Now, just like in the comics, an MCU Dark Avengers could result from Secret Invasion. It could also be a cool way to do a Thunderbolts sequel if that movie's a hit. And instead of Osborn, maybe Thunderbolt Ross, now played by Harrison Ford, can form this team, like kind of an anti-Nick Fury. Its members can be any of the Thunderbolts we see in the first film, as well as Moonstone, Hawkeye, Novar, and even an MCU Venom. Now, these are the Avengers teams that already have a lot of basis for making their MCU debut in the next couple years, but there's also some that might show up later, like after the multiverse saga ends. That includes the Savage Avengers, based on a comic series created in 2019 by Jerry Duggan and Mike Deodato Jr. The Savage Avengers story involves the Eye of Agamotto in the prehistoric Savage Land, which would be really awesome to see in live action. Its lead character is Conan the Barbarian, yes, that Conan, who is a pulp hero created in 1932 that Marvel eventually incorporated into their own canon. Among other characters, Conan teams up with Wolverine, the Punisher, Cloak and Dagger, Black Knight, Venom, and Elektra. Now, considering that some characters have already appeared in the MCU, like Venom and the Black Knight, and others have shown up in MCU-adjacent projects, and some, like Wolverine and Punisher, will join the proper MCU soon enough, we could get a Savage Avengers storyline at some point down the road. Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger might be a little too old to play Conan the Barbarian, but I could think of somebody else who's perfect for the role.
Taken 2 days ago, so this is accurate.
It's all but certain that after the multiverse saga ends with Phase 6 and 2 more Avengers movies, the MCU will begin its mutant saga and probably introduce the X-Men once and for all.
And when are we getting the X-Men?
This would be a perfect time for the Avengers to evolve into the Avengers Unity Division, aka the Uncanny Avengers. The Uncanny Avengers comics were created by Rick Remender and John Cassaday and debuted in 2012. The team is formed by Captain America to help bridge the divide between mutants and humans following the Avengers vs. X-Men war, something that also, God, I hope we get to see in the mutant saga. Cyclops' brother Havoc is the leader of the Uncanny Avengers, whose members included at one time or another Steve Rogers, Sam Wilson, Thor, Rogue, Scarlet Witch, Wolverine, Quicksilver, Sabretooth, Psylocke, and Deadpool. Storylines included the team traveling to the High Evolutionaries' counter-Earth. I could see Sam Wilson's Captain America reaching across the aisle to the new X-Men to form a Phase 7 version of the Avengers, which by my calculation would be sometime in the 2030s. God, we're old. MCU members of the Uncanny Avengers could include Sam and Bucky, White Vision, Deadpool, the MCU versions of the X-Men that we haven't met yet, like Havoc, Rogue, and Psylocke. It might be asking too much to get Hugh Jackman back as a full-time member, but he could show up after his Deadpool 3 appearance.
Go f yourself.
Uncanny Avengers might be the perfect place for Wanda to redeem herself after the events of Multiverse of Madness. Scarlet Witch is, after all, the daughter of Magneto, and if the idea behind the Uncanny Avengers is forgiveness and moving on beyond previous conflicts, then there would be a place for Wanda to return. Hopefully, none of the X-Men would find out what she did on Earth 838. There are also more Avengers offshoots that could conceivably show up in the MCU, especially if it just keeps going and going even after the Mutant Saga. There's Avengers 2099, the Astonishing Avengers, the Mighty Avengers, the US Avengers, Avengers Resistance, but the ones I mentioned are the ones that I think have the best chance of happening. Anyways, thanks for watching. Don't forget to smash that bell and don't... What?
Wait!
Oh, fine, Doug. Okay, real quick, let's talk about the Great Lakes Avengers. They first appeared in 1989 and are headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Their leader is Mr. Immortal, who appeared briefly in an episode of She-Hulk.
Right? No, I'm not sure who I should worry about. The government. Because he does it every single time.
Was there an insurance claim after any of the ends of switching identities?
I highly doubt that we'll see a Great Lake Avengers film anytime soon, but if the East Coast and West Coast can get their own Avengers teams, I suppose it's only fair that the Rust Belt gets one too.
Go fighting Irish.
Wait, Doug, you're a Notre Dame fan?
I have my reasons.
It's because of Rudy, isn't it?
Yes.
But what I lack in size, I make up for in obnoxiousness.
The Great Lakes Avengers are mostly a joke team, but they would be a lot of fun to see show up somewhere in the MCU, especially on a Disney Plus series. Well guys, those are the Avengers teams that we think we'll see in the MCU. Did I leave any out? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.